Today we're going to start a 9-part series on the fruits of the Spirit. We find the fruits of the Spirit in Galatians chapter 5 in verse 22. The Apostle Paul is writing to the church in Galatia, and he writes that if you are going to be a Christian, if you're going to identify yourself as a Christian, there are certain characteristics, certain qualities that should be exhibited in your lifestyle. Now, we just went through the Beatitudes and we talked about the 9-step process of what Jesus wants his followers to be like. Poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Those are the things that Jesus wants his disciples doing. But there are characteristics and traits in his disciples that he wants to see in you. They're the fruit of the Spirit. They're the evidence that you are walking in him. And they are like this. He says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And today we're going to talk about the first of those, and that is love. And I think it's important to note that love is the first one out of the box. First thing that Paul says when talking about the characteristics that will define his followers, Christ's followers, is love. Now, a lot has been made about the different Greek words for love. C.S. Lewis wrote a book defining the three loves, storge, philos, and agape. There's a book out there that talks about the 4 loves, which would include the word eros, which is a physical, sexual attraction between people. But really, there are 2 primary words in the New Testament used for love, and that is philos and agape. Now, the Greeks had 16 words for love, 16 different types of love that are identified by the Greeks in the words that they use in their vocabularies. And English only has 1 word that we just throw as a blanket over all of those. You use the word love to describe eroticism, but we use love to describe the love that we have for our grandmother or our child. They're not the same thing in Greek. So let's talk about these 2 words, philos and agape. Philos, we learn, is more of an affectionate love. There's a warmth to philos. There's a closeness to it. When there's somebody close to you, you love them because of their closeness. I love my brothers and sisters. I love my wife. I love my children. I love the people in my church. I love God. I'm close to all of them. So I feel this natural affection towards them. And sometimes that affection gets disrupted. Sometimes our love gets interrupted, but we love them with philos love. That's what philos love is all about. But agape love, there's a slight difference there. In the ancient world, before the Bible was written, the Greeks used these 2 words, philos and agape, and they used them in 2 different senses. For instance, Xenophon, a Greek writer, tells a story about a guy named Aristarchus who comes to Socrates. There are a couple of historic figures named Aristarchus. I don't think this is either one of those. It's not the mathematician and astronomer, and it's not the Greek politician. But a guy named Aristarchus comes to Socrates, and he says, hey, I've got this problem. Because of the wars, I've got 16 women. No, it was 14. I've got 14 women who are under my charge now. And I don't know if they were living in his house or if he was just responsible for them, but 14 women. And he said, I can't handle this. What should I do? And Socrates' word to him was, put them to work. Find a job. Find some way to keep them occupied. So he did that, and it worked. But Xenophon records that, and he uses 2 different words for love to describe what happened. He said the women loved him with a philos love. He used the word philos because they were close to him by association, and he stepped up to the plate. He did what he needed to do to save them. He had become their provider and their protector, and they loved him for that. But the love of Aristarchus for them was agape love. It wasn't philos love, it was agape love, because they were distant and he had to find a way to draw them closer. See, philos love starts with closeness. Agape love starts with distance and draws you closer. This is why Jesus says in the Gospel of Matthew in verse 43, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. He's not talking about philos love. You're not starting at a close place. They are distant from you. Your enemies are separated from you. They're distant. But he's saying, find a way to draw them in. You've got to work on how to get them closer to you. You have to use your mind and your will to love them, not your heart. That's the difference. Philos starts with the heart. I'm close to you, so I love you. My heart is naturally drawn to you. There's a warmth and an affection that I feel for you. Agape has to travel a distance to be love. It starts with the mind and the will. You have to make a commitment. You have to dedicate yourself to pursuing a love for that person. That's what God is driving at. That there's a distance between us and him. Isaiah 55, God says, my ways are not your ways and your ways are not my ways. Isaiah 59 tells us that our sins have made a separation between us and God. So he traveled that distance to draw us near, to bring love to us. That's the component of agape that we need to focus on. And this comes to the fore in a very important place in the scriptures, and that's in Malachi. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 6, we learned one of these eternal characteristics of God, and that is his immutability. Immutability means that God does not change. The book of James tells us that in God there is no variation or shifting shadow. The book of Revelation tells us that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Malachi says, I do not change. Now, why is that important? The word love isn't even in there. So why is that important in understanding what love is all about? Well, it's because of where that takes us. It's what follows from that statement. God says, I do not change. Therefore, O Jacob, you are not consumed. Let that sink in for a minute. I do not change. Therefore, I have not completely wiped you off the face of the earth. You see, if God's love was based on emotion, on how he feels one day at our response and as opposed to another day, we would be gone. We wouldn't even be dust in the air. We would be completely gone. We wouldn't even exist anymore. But God's love for us is based on his commitment to love us. It's based on his promise to love us. And that will never change. I will never leave you or forsake you. I will always love you. My love is an eternal love for you. It will never change. It will never go away. That is what Paul is getting at in Galatians. The fruit of the Spirit is love, first and foremost. That means that we don't just love people because they work with us or they go to church with us or they're my brothers and sisters. We don't love them just because they're close to us by association. We love them because we have set our mind to it and our will to it. We have become people of love. And that is what identifies us more than anything else. The book of 1 John says God is love. And as followers of him, that should be our primary characteristic. That's our message about love. Next time out, we're going to talk about joy. Thanks, everybody. God bless.